Hello learners and viewers, welcome to this program. Myself Dr. G. Uma. Today's topic is Interrogating Gender Gaps in the Economy. This lecture is part of the course MGSE 009. This course is offered for the learners enrolled in MA Gender and Development Studies as well as learners enrolled in MA in Economics. Today we are going to learn about the reason for gender inequality that is exist both in the developed and developing countries. That is the first objective of today's lecture. The second one is that gender gaps are more visible in many indicators in the developing countries due to patriarchy and socialization process. As a learners of Masters in Gender and Development Studies, you all must be already understand the existing socialization process, how patriarchy operates various sectors as well as various ways it operates basically to make the women as a secondary citizens. That is the first thing. If you look at the gaps, gender gaps in various sectors, you could able to understand the gaps in the education. For example, if education, when we talk about the education, you could able to understand the existing gender gaps through gross enrollment ratio, net enrollment ratio in various like stages. For example, primary, upper primary, secondary, as well as in the higher education, as well as with regard to earnings and occupation. Certain occupations only occupied the male members, which gives more returns financially, as well as access to formal employment, access to managerial positions, access to productive inputs, political representation. After looking at the political representation in the existing gender gaps, the government has brought the reservation for the women at various levels. We are already having the reservation both in the parliament and state assemblies as well as in the panchayats. We could able to see the bargaining powers inside as well as outside the households. These are the certain things we could able to see the existing gender gaps. As far as Dollar and Getty estimated the gender gaps in schooling, as per 1990 data, you could able to see that in the poorest quintile of countries, only 5% of the adult women had any secondary education compared to one half of the level of men. Same like when it comes to secondary education, 51% of the adult women had a secondary education compared to 88% of the male members. Even we could able to see the existing gender gaps in getting, for example, payment. Some of the, if you look at the existing gender gaps, we could able to see that the existing gender gap is reducing so fast in the developing countries than in the developed countries. When we talk about the gender gaps, this gender inequality, that is highly prevalent in South Asia as well as Middle East and North Africa. These are the some of the areas where the gender equality is highly prevalent. We could able to see that this gender equality we could able to assess through the informal economy and household economy. You all must be wondering that how can we assess the informal economy? When it comes to formal and informal economy, the existing data clearly points out that large percentage of the women, they were part of the informal economy. Basically, the reason for the women to be part of the informal economy is that and the women, due to their low education, low skilled, as well as the more skilled in the sense that both technical and non-technical skills make the women to be part of the informal economy. That is the main reason. As far as household economy is that concerned, already the women, they were contributing for the subsistence economy. But when it comes to subsistence economy, that subsistence economy mostly it is not part of the macroeconomy, and whatever the women contribute for the subsistence economy, that is not valued, as well as we are not recognizing the women's contribution to the subsistence economy. If you look at, these are the some of the thing, whatever the women contribute as a family labor, those family labor also it's unpaid. When we talk about the family labor, women majoritarily they are part of the agriculture. More than 75% of the agricultural activities are done by the women. But most of them, these agriculture laborers or women work in their own farm. They are not recognized, and their activities are not part of the major macroeconomic activities. That is the thing. So the women's, whatever the women contribute, it is not valued and it is not counted. This is the informal economy. When it comes to formal economy, the women also mostly underrepresented among formal economic activities when it comes to decision making level. This underrepresentation we could able to see both developed and developing countries. When it comes to managerial positions, there are around 30% of the women are as part of the top managerial positions. You all must be wondering, why do we need women to be the managerial position? When it comes to managerial position, most of the decisions taken at the any organization or institutions decisions are taken by the individuals occupied in the managerial positions. If there is more number of women, if they occupy in the managerial position, certainly whatever the decisions they could able to take, it reflects the needs of the both male and females. But if there is a less and less number of women, if they occupy in the managerial position, most of the time the needs of the female may not be reflect in the decisions taken at the managerial level. That is the very important. Even if you look at the, as I have already mentioned, that even if the more number of women, 80% of the women, if they are part of the even global labor force also, these women mostly they were part of the certain sectors. But now we could able to go back and we have to see where this gender inequality in economics has originated. When we talk about the women's inequality or gender equality in the economy, we could able to realize that the study carried out by the Esther Boschrup in the African agricultural sector, based on the, we have elaborately talked about the Esther Boschrup's work in our coursework. Basically, she has based on her study, she could able to come to the conclusion that the women, they did contribute for the agricultural activities. Whatever their contribution, it has not recognized and it has not valued. That is the first significant study in the field came up. And based on Esther Boschrup's study, globally feminists and policymakers, they have realized that the inclusion of the women in the economy is very significant, and based on the Esther Boschrup study, they could able to bring framework that is called Women in Development Framework, the WID approach, which was emerged in 1970. And it was formally accepted by many countries, including India, to formulate the policies based on the WID. This WID approach widely discussed in the first international conference in 1975. According to Cecile Berlanga Alaso Robles, I quote, "The WID movement advocated for gender equality. However, its central and more popular discourse was based on economic efficiency arguments, also known as the," I quote, "gender efficiency approach," I unquote. This WID approach is based on the idea that when the women, if they have an access to education, jobs, credit and assets, they could also able to contribute substantially to the society's economic growth, and they could able to catalyze its development process. That is the main idea behind this WID approach. As per Esther Boschrup's study, feminists and policy makers, they concluded that lack of access to resources and jobs, credit facilities, and lack of educational facilities, they made the women to become secondary citizens, or they are not treated on par with male members in the society. It's very significant to provide the jobs. They have to provide the education, they have to provide credit facilities to make them as an entrepreneurs. That is the main reason. When we talk about gender equality, we need to understand that they need to have an equal access. Both male and female, they should have an equal access to economic resources, equal they have to equal access to educational facilities, and they have to, once they educated and skilled, automatically they have to be treated on par with male members to access the labor market. What happened is that when they could able to access like a male members in the society for labor market, education, and other economic resources, they could invariably, we assume that the both male and female, they could equally, they could get a benefit. But here also the feminist critiqued, specifically feminist economists, they critiqued the existing assumption on gender equality, and they tried to raise few questions. Here, first concept we need to understand, that is called the material altruism. As per material altruism, this is a certain kinds of stereotype. Like this stereotype that talk about the by virtue of being a woman and also by virtue of being a mother, naturally the women, they have a nurturing as well as sacrificing characters. By virtue of being a woman, certainly they could able to do certain kinds of productive and reproductive work. Even if they do certain kinds of reproductive work, that may lead to that productive work that may lead to address the needs of the family members in the society. Specifically, even if they involve in the productive work, that productive work, whatever the benefits they get from that productive work, that benefit will certainly improve the children and other family members, like their well-beings. Basically, it addresses the well-beings of the children and other family members in the society. So, what is the rationale behind this assumption is that this assumption failed to capture the existing structural discriminations. As a learners of Masters in Gender and Development Studies as well as Masters in Economics, you all must be know that what is existing social structures, family, market, and other social structures, they also behave in a certain way. Basically, they accept the existing patriarchal nature, and well as they behave in a certain manner. So, the existing patriarchy, culture, other social norms, specifically it plays the significant role in the social life, especially in the developing and low income countries. So, because of these existing norms, patriarchal norms and culture, we are talking about the material altruism. So, the existing assumptions and studies clearly pointed out that unless and until we address the existing inequalities operated through the certain social norms and through patriarchy, it is too difficult to bring the gender equality. So, gender equality can be improved, and all the development outcomes can be improved by addressing the existing patriarchy as well as the existing socialization process. This is the main thing, but the existing study clearly points out that after the women, if the women actively participate in the certain kinds of productive work, and if they could able to earn financially, the studies clearly pointed out that they are investing whatever their earnings, they are investing their earnings to the well-beings of the children in their family. That is the first conclusions they have brought it. This was again and again reinforced by the feminist economists and others also. According to Cecile Berlanga, Alasso Robis, I quote, this argument, material altruism, this argument assumes that children's chances of a healthier life, higher life expectancy and improved quality of life are directly linked to gender equality, that is, to women having access to economic resources and being able to choose where to allocate them. As I have mentioned that if the women could able to actively participate in the productive activities, they are investing their returns only on the well-beings of the children. Thus, women's empowerment is regarded as an enhancer of cross-generational social mobility and of long-term social and economic returns. That is the reason why it is labeled as a smart economics. If we start involving more and more women in the economic activities, that is the productive work, certainly it not only improve the, once we started valuing, calculating the women's contribution in both productive and reproductive areas, then that certainly will improve the economic activities, as well as they could able to invest in the next generation, that is invest in their children as well as well-being of the family members. Thus, we could able to improve the next generations, and they could able to, this will bring the positive consequences in the life of the children. That is called the smart economics. As well as the studies conducted in Guatemala and Brazil, it's clearly showed that higher the female share of the household budget is associated with better nutritional status of children as opposed to paternal income. If there is a maternal income, certainly it has clearly, it showed that it improved the nutritional status of the children. As well as you could able to see that once the women, if they could able to be part of the market economy, their bargaining power certainly has improved, and they have a greater participation in reproductive decisions, as well as they could able to provide higher quality of care and investment in their children. That is the thing. But in this entire process, we must also understand the existing patriarchy as well as socialization process. This existing patriarchy and socialization process, it has bring implicit as well as explicit bias towards the women and girl children. First, I could able to see that how it bring, like all social structures, whether it's a family, society, market, these are the various social structures. These social structures, they have an inbuilt patriarchal norms, values in their mind. That is the main reason that we could able to see that even in the formal economy, because of the existing patriarchal norms, they have a strong notion that the women should be part of the certain kinds of certain types of economic activities. They may not be able to perform as expected in the managerial positions. And we need to understand that why are the most of the women part of the informal economy is that because of the low education as well as low skilled, and earlier, if you look at that, when the agriculture is part of the major economic activities, when the agriculture as a sector, when they could able to give GDP, around 50% of the GDP is part of the agriculture in the early 60s and 70s. The majority of the women, they got the employment opportunities as an agriculture laborer or as part of the various agricultural activities. When the agriculture sector itself could not able to observe more labor in for its activities, most of the women, they lost their employment opportunities and they tend to migrate to various sectors. Specifically, when they tend to migrate along the to urban areas, they became part of the majority of the women, they became part of the informal sector. That is the main reason. So the patriarchy, as well as when it talk about the entire patriarchy and socialization process bring the implicit bias towards the women and girl children, means one is I talked about how the various social structures they operate and impact the life of the women. Second one is that like family as a social structure, they shows bias towards the girl children, and they may show the indifferences with regard to education of the girl children. If they lack education, they also lack a bargaining power. For example, most of the developing countries, women are less likely to engage in high skill productive work. That is what I have talked about earlier. And also their returns on educational investment are very low. And most of the families in the Asian and other countries, they prefer to have a male children due to various reasons that clearly shows that there is a discrimination towards the female children. That is the one significant factors we need to understand. Second one is that when we narrowly focusing on women's agency, as well as most of the programs and policies we formulate without understanding the existing social factors as well as patriarchal relations, it may bring the negative impact in the life of the women rather than it brings the positive impact. Based on the study carried out by the conditional caste transfers programs or key schemes for poverty reduction programs, feminist economists, they concluded that it is the stereotyping programs. What existing norms clearly shows that, the studies clearly shows that if the women economically independent, certainly they could able to invest the well-being of the children and other family members. Based on these existing assumptions, the government also, most of the governments in the world, they formulate a certain policies. The one of the significant policy is the conditional caste transfer. This program clearly targeting women in developing countries, both positive and a negative manner. For example, we call it as this program is very successful in promoting children's school attendance as well as improving their health and nutritional indicators. As well as this program clearly shows that work carried out by women in their households, and that clearly showed that they are concentrating the well-being of their own children. So if the government transfers cash to the accounts of the women, certainly that will improve the life of the children. This is based on the existing norms we are talking about that. Certainly we could able to see that women, they will invest their resources more on the well-being of the entire family, as well as if we again and again reinforce these social norms and roles and responsibilities and beliefs based on the government program, certainly it is very difficult to change the existing gender roles. So when we make the policies, we must understand the existing social norms, how this patriarchy and other social structures operate in the society. Based on that, we must make certain policies and programs. That is the first thing. And when we talk about the women's empowerment, we have to talk about the, like we need to understand that women certainly they provide when we talk about the women's empowerment, certainly we only talk about the women's agencies, how the women they could able to exercise their own agency. Beyond that, most of the time we fail to understand that how to bring the gender equality. Looking at this existing data, we could able to conclude that there is an gender differences still existing in the society. This we could able to understand through various socio-economic indicators. We could address these existing gender inequality by understanding the existing social norms, values, how this patriarchy and other socialization process operates in the society. Based on this understanding, we could able to bring certain government programs and policies to bring gender equality and equity in the society. Hope all of you could able to understand the essence of this today's lecture. This lecture is basically to make the learners to know that how there is a existing gender differences that could be understood through the various indicators like education, income, and how many women they are part of the various sectors. Based on that, one could able to see the existing differences. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. Again, we could be able to meet the another lecture to know the more concepts. Thank you.